Mon nom est Michèle Robitaille, je suis la directrice et chef de projet de Connexité. Notre stand est dans la salle, le kiosque 409 et c'est un plaisir pour moi de vous présenter aujourd'hui le panel qui sera modéré par Pierre Roberge, ici, qui est le cofondateur et directeur général du laboratoire d'identité numérique du Canada, qui parlera de l'identité numérique, la route vers l'interopérabilité. Et avec ces deux invités du gouvernement du Nouveau-Brunswick et du Conseil du Trésor du Canada. Alors, merci et bonne session.
Merci, Michel. Bonjour tout le monde. Ça marche? Ça marche tantôt? Allô? Oui, ça marche-tu? C'est bon? Et voilà. Bonjour, merci d'être présent aujourd'hui avec nous. Mon nom est Pierre Roberge. Je suis le fondateur et le directeur général du laboratoire d'identité numérique du Canada. Le laboratoire est un OBNL qui existe pour favoriser l'adoption de la confiance numérique. Je ne passerai pas trop de temps sur le laboratoire, simplement pour ajouter que le laboratoire n'est pas un incubateur. On ne développe pas de solutions d'identité numérique et on ne revend pas de solutions d'identité numérique. Le laboratoire est un acteur neutre qui favorise l'adoption des solutions centrées sur l'usager. J'aimerais commencer avec, so I'm going to switch in English now. I'd like to ask you with a show of hand here, who is here familiar with the benefit of digital ID or verifiable credential? Show of hand. Okay. All right, let's start with an introduction. So digital ID we'll do that quickly. So welcome to Digital ID 101. Digital ID applies, your identity is contextual. It can apply to an individual, an organization, or even an object. I've mentioned the concept of verifiable credential. Verifiable credential at the very basis, do three things and do three things very well. The first thing is we're able to produce a document, an electronic document that we give to the users, being a citizen or a business, and we know that the document is authentic. We know that the information on the document has not been modified, and we know who is the issuer of the document. At the basis, these are the three things that a verifiable credential is doing. There's different way to deliver on that value. There's different technology on that, but this is basically the foundation of a verifiable credential. We're here today to talk about digital identity and interoperability because we can see in the Canadian scene and we can see internationally there's a growing number of planned or in production rollout of digital identity. And we see those happening in the public and in the private sector. We see different use case, we see different place of use. And this is great. But the reality is it is not a single technology, it is not a single implementation. There's too many use cases, there's too many legislation, policy, place of use, etc. So we need to adapt. The market is adapting to using the best implementation or the most suited implementation for digital ID, depending if we're identifying a customer, an organization, an object, or so on. So what is interoperability? We could spend a lot of time on this. I'm gonna synthesize it to portability. It's more than that, but think about portability. Your phone, if you travel from outside Canada, is working. It works in your country. It works here. Your credit card works in the country, works outside of Canada. This didn't happen just like this. It's through effort of conformity and interoperability. So the last technical word is portability. It's just working. The average Canadian has over 120 username and password on the internet today. And as we are thinking about digital ID, I don't know about you, but I don't want 120 new application on my phone. We need, if we were thinking about portability, there's a number of key credentials that we're using today in the physical world that allow us to transact in different places. And so this is the reason why it's important. This is, it increased the utility for consumer. because I have more place to use. It increases the utility for organization because there's more user using it, and this is the reason that I think you should you should take good note of the people on the panel today and what they're doing. We have a super panel today. We have representation. We have a government focus view of interoperability. I mentioned that your identity is defined by public and private sector, but we're doing a tremendous amount of work in the country, and it's great to have them here. And now I'm going to turn over. My job is done, and I will ask them to quickly introduce themselves, and I will ask them to say why it was important for them to be here today and to talk about interoperability. Thank you.
Thanks, Pierre. Just again, want to double check the mic is working. Can someone give me a oui? Okay, merci. So my name is Colleen Bolden. I'm with the province of New Brunswick, and I've been working on this digital identity. What is it? For the last probably 7 years. So I've a long time been involved in ICT, information telecom, communications tech, cyber, privacy, security across public sector, academic, and private sector. This file challenged me big time when I first started working on it. And I can tell you, you sit in very technical meetings, and then you go to meetings on the law, and then you go to communication meetings, and then you're producing a video. At the end of the day, it's about proving who you are to the same degree and certitude that you do in the physical world. You show a driver's license to rent a car. You show a passport or a driver's license to board a plane. If you want to renew your driver's license or get a driver's license for the first time, you have to produce certain things that prove you're you. Rent an apartment, get a loan during COVID. How complicated was that? So there's all of these things that we do and don't even think about. Again, I can remember a time traveling in foreign countries when I tried to use my Visa card and they didn't have a machine. And so we don't think about it because we've already lived that change in the financial services space, and there's new tools and things coming on. But Visa cards are a great example of, I don't care what's going on behind the scenes, I just want it to work so I can do stuff with it. And that's what digital ID is. So it's not about the service delivery side, although it impacts it dramatically. Digital ID is about proving you're you, the same way you step up with things you have in your wallet physically today to prove you're you. And they're issued by governments many times, or they might be issued by a body that says you're an engineer in good standing or a lawyer in good standing, and a doctor that has the right certifications to go to work in a particular province. So why do I care about digital ID? Because it is going to be the thing that changes everything. It will help us deliver better services in the government environment more efficiently, more effectively, but more importantly to citizens, you just want to do stuff and you want to do it safely and you want to be in control of all of those things that are in your wallet that as you move about the economy, you pull out today. But what also happens is that in the business environment, they want to know that it's coming from an authoritative source. So I'm a citizen of the country. That's not your passport. That means you can travel and it gives you certain mobility across borders. But it is your birth certificate or it is immigration papers at IRCC at the federal level. Those are base foundational documents. And as Pierre mentioned, there's contextual, which I gave a whole lot of examples. I'm a lawyer in good standing. I have a health card that enables me to get health services. And where we haven't gone yet is what does legal look like in that respect? So there's many, many things that are evolving. There's a tremendous amount of work being done by many, many colleagues in New Brunswick, little old New Brunswick. If you look across the provinces, we are sitting jointly I was a member of IMSC, which was the Identity Management Subcommittee, and joint councils where we all collaborate, federal, provincial, as well as territorial. Now called the JEDI team. I'm sure some of you will like that, but it's the jurisdictional experts in digital ID. There's service delivery council, there's a deputy minister council, there's a ministerial council. All of these things are progressing, the digital identity files, the cyber files, and working together collaboratively. I also sit on Canary under their cybersecurity space. Canary has the networks that run in our academic systems so that professors can move about between institutions and log in, share data, collaborate, write their papers, and do what they need to do. They just want it to work. So I'm on the identity and cyber committee there. I'm also on the DIAC Trust Expert Framework Committee and the DIAC board. I'm a second term there. And what DIAC has been doing, along with the public sector work, is working on the Pan-Canadian Trust Framework. And what that is a set of frameworks, is a framework for Canada that points at what's good look like. And it points at standards. So in the case of the privacy module, it would point at the federal law, it would point at the jurisdictional law, and it would say, this is what good looks like. This is what you have to adhere to. And on the technical side, on infrastructure, it's going to point at international standards as well. And what does that look like? So whether it's IEEE, ISO, NIST, you name it. There's a whole lot of different areas. So everyone across the country is partnering. Everyone across the country is working on this together collaboratively. And there's lots of pilots and proofs of concepts.
I want to update my definition of interoperability. I think that Colleen has told us 5 times, I just want it to work. And I think that's a very good way to think about it. Paul, please introduce yourself quickly and why it's important to talk, having today's talk.
Yeah, so I'm Paul Jackson. I'm from the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat in the federal government, and so I'm representing the Digital Credentials Program. So with digital credentials, consider it a lot of the documents that are being referred to. These are the lifeblood of the economy. Whether you're so not only does it include digital identity documents, it can include things such as licenses, permits, bills of lading, proof of income, you can name it. There's a whole series of documents or claims across the economy. So we're focused on enabling the use of a lot of these government and private sector issued documents. So our focus is very much on a national approach to this. How do we make this work across the economy with trading partners? How do we enable businesses and individuals? Because it's not just one jurisdiction. Like if you look at a lot of the businesses across Canada, they're heavily involved with the supply chain with the United States. They may be selling their products in other countries, and same thing with individuals. So our focus is on how do we put these key pieces in place that can enable this to work across the country. How do we make it so as they suggested, it just works. We don't want users being stuck in one of those nightmare scenarios where, okay, well, I went to get this jurisdiction's wallet. I go get those credentials. I go to the U.S. Oh, no, I don't accept that wallet. Go get the U.S. wallet. Go back to the other jurisdiction. I don't accept that either. How do we make it so that it's a seamless and easy experience so regardless of the use case, whether you're talking financial sector, health sector, government, you're able to get your documents, get in the wallet of your choice, and then be able to then engage in transactions across the economy. And so certainly from the work we have, we're working towards standardization. We're working with the Standards Council of Canada towards the National Standard of Canada to help standardize this space. We're working with, we're pilot testing various technologies with various vendors. Like we're on like a National Digital Trust Service pilot where we're bringing vendors to test out how we can make it easy to make it easy to issue and verify digital credentials, not only testing out from our perspective, but helping a lot of those vendors to be able to make their products much more competitive and marketable, so then they can actually provide out solutions that can help the economy. And also working with trading partners. So I was working with the European Commission, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, UK, Singapore, and I'm also the lead chair on the government advisory body of the International Association of Trusted Blockchain Applications, which is also focused on how we support cross-border usage of digital credentials, digital identity, and self-sovereign identity. So a lot of work from the federal perspective, but I think the big thing is we all have to work together. So recognizing that everyone has a very important role to play in this.
So just for context, just making it work for the economy in Canada, there's been some study that suggests that there could be growth of 3 to 6% of the GDP. This is substantial. This is better servicing Canadian. This is better servicing user and organization. And again, just make it work is important. Paul, you were involved in a workshop with the EU looking at interoperability and how to ensure mutual support and recognition of digital credential. What were some of the findings out of that work?
Well, I think a big thing that we recognize is that different jurisdictions, different sectors are going to make their own technology choices. I don't think we're going to see a situation where there's going to be one platform or one wallet to rule them all. So everyone will have their own implementations, but I think that's where it's important to have a lot of that collaboration to avoid creating economic and sectoral silos. Last thing we need is a whole bunch of walled gardens in each of the different jurisdictions and different sectors. So that's where I think that it was identified that there needs to be a lot of work together, both from not only from a technology standpoint, making sure those various technology stacks, those various solutions are able to work with one another, but also it's going to be a matter of trust. So you may have your own technology implementation, but different jurisdictions are going to make their own choices. So there are those that issue the credentials, which will make their own choices. But then there's also those that have to make the legal decision whether or not they trust what's being presented to them enough, whether they trust the credential that was issued, whether they trust the wallet it's held in, whether they trust the person that's presenting it. So I think there's a lot of these policy aspects as well. So it's not only technology alignment, it's very important to tackle this from a policy standpoint, making sure that whether you're talking about mutual trust agreements, you have to tackle it from the perspective making it easy for the other, like everyone to be able to trust one another, because it's not a one side, it's like a two-way street, as they say. Like it's both the issuers and the verifiers have to agree upon that. So when I say issuer verifier, like the documents and those that consume it, whether it could be a government organization, private sector, bank, or whatever. So I think that was one of the big findings. We need to work closely together, alignment on standardization, collaborate on the development of standards, work together. I think it was also important to make this concrete. So a key part of that is we have to work together, whether on proof of concept or pilots, working on end-to-end use cases, like testing this out. Because, but honestly, when we actually try, you can have kind of an academic discussion to how this works, but until you actually try to do this for real, like the real warts of the approach can come out. So they think that's very important to work with those. And also be careful about vendor lock-in, platform capture and such. So I think that's why it's so important to work towards that open standards approach, but also it's important to do that testing, not only use cases, but also look at it like how can you actually trust these wallets and such. So I think there's a lot of work, there's a lot of recommendations, including continuing to work together and elevating it to the next level from a broader international discussion, which is what we're doing through the International Associated of Trusted Blockchain Applications, a very long name, but it represents over 20 different countries, because it's not just between the European Union and us, not just between the US and us. For this to actually make sense for businesses and Canadians, we have to be able to work across all their trading partners. So not only make it domestically, but it has to work internationally. So I think that those are a lot of findings that came from that. Big thing is that collaboration and alignment.
So that report is available online. It's not a secret. It's not a good secret either. It's available online, and you can search for it. Canada, EU, interoperability. Sorry, I don't remember the keyword. Paul focused very much, his example, we're very much at the international level, and now we assure that as Canadian, we're able to transact, we're able to do business or travel outside the country. But Colleen, talk to us about how we do that inside Canada. How does the province work together? How do we make sure that that we can provide that best experience to citizens? I just moved from Ontario to Quebec, and it's painful. I actually don't have a driver's license right now. They took it from me.
We have online testing.
Yes, exactly. So what are provinces doing in Canada to ensure that we have the best experience to citizen and for organization to really realize the benefit?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and it's such an elephant to eat for most governments. Let's face it, private sector does it way better. How many of you use Google Maps? Like, Hello. How many of you have expectations that government will be just as good as Amazon, as good as, like, come on. You do. I have them. And then I go to use something, and I am the most impatient. If I have to clunk around, I just go, oh, excuse me. And I call them, and I say, I'm done with this. Because usually there's something that isn't built into it that isn't intuitive, and I have to go and say, okay, fine. I give up. I'm not wasting any more time. So you as citizens, first of all, have to have a need that we need to meet. You want to have control. We all know of all of the friends and family that have been hacked, their bank accounts, the Facebook. We know usernames and passwords don't work, and that 120, we're all faced with trying to be efficient but different in each one of those passwords using, LastPass or something else that you want to, because we can't do it. Our brains don't compute that. Let's face it, we're humans. At the end of the day, we want a human experience that is quick and easy and gets us to what we want to get done and out. It's particularly important if you have children, if you're a caregiver of seniors, and you're trying to, you're wedged between a job and all your family responsibilities. My kids are in their early 30s, and they go, Mom, what are you working on? Like, isn't that done? Family members that work for Google pull out their Apple device and go, look, here's my wallet. But what's the problem with that? Why can't we just go that route? The problem is, and Paul talked about this, is vendor lock-in. And the old thing that you hear every time you go to a conference, if there's no charge, you are the product. So where's your information going? What percentage of fees are getting, taken somewhere else? And how are they, what's the business model behind it? So I'm not anti-profit, I'm definitely not. But we have to understand these new models, allow for innovation, allow for distinction in innovation so that new companies can be formed, but we also have to make sure that we're protecting citizens. Your grandmother may not understand that Facebook shouldn't be asking for your health record. But those of us in this space understand it, and we also understand that it has to be the way we develop services have to be intuitive. We talk about a lot of new buzzwords around user design, citizen-centric. I mean, the list is endless. Nobody understands what we're talking about but us. And there's all these new skills behind. At the end of the day, we have to protect our grandmothers and our children online in this new world because there's lots of people who are not out there for the good. And so it's about these new rules, business rules around business models. It's about legal, and it's about technical. And it's not any one thing that's going to make the difference. It's all of these pillars coming along with the legal frameworks. And you mentioned the work with the EU. I really like what the EU has done around the next round of EIDAS and where their principles are. And even Homeland Security on their technical stream, they talk about principles as a starting point. No vendor lock-in, no multi-platform testing, test suites, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can find all this stuff online. I'm not going to go through it. But if you look at the EU, it's also saying, hey, we're a market body. We need to be able to transact across member states. We need the rules to be harmonized. We need to protect citizens. They need to be in control of their information. They need to consent, clearly consent, not, okay, consent this way, and by the way, I'm going to, throw it 5 different ways of Sundays and get paid for it. We need to understand what informed consent is, and that we're in control of sharing that data. If I want to board a plane, I'm going to share my passport information with Air Canada to board the plane. I consent to that because I want to fly. So that's clear. It's not clear. The rules of the road are not clear today, and they need to be strengthened. And there's so much work going on that's important with the federal government and the digital nations. And there's lots of lessons learned with other countries that have already launched digital ID programs, some successful, some not. And if you look at e-government and who's doing it well, it's probably the Scandinavian countries, where adoption is high. and they've been at it for a while. So there's lots and lots of work to be done. In Canada, we're working together. We have been for a very long time. It's a group of coalition of the willing, along with formal roles and responsibilities. But it's also organizations like DIAC, which is the Digital Identity Authentication of Council of Canada, which was formed after the 2008 financial crisis as a way for the public and the private sector to collaborate. It's at joint councils, which is part of the public sector only consultation. It's at the CIO Strategy Council, where public and private work together, and Paul mentioned that. It's at the Digital Lab, which is a sandbox, a testing area, and that collaboration will continue. And you mentioned a lot of the work that's been done on pilots. It's not enough anymore to just do those pilots, learn your lessons, and hide what you learned. If we don't work together and share, we will never combat the threat. The bad guys are too well funded, they're too smart, they're faster than we are, and they collaborate, as you heard the FBI's gentleman say this morning. So.
Very good. So we have 4 minutes left. We will take questions. So if there are some brave of you, please go to the microphone. I want to go. There's a lot of disinformation and misinformation on the internet. So about what we're doing and the important work being done here. So I want to go back on principle quickly. The principle for digital identity in Quebec and Canada and for a growing number of nations is about choice. The user will have the choice to use a solution or not. It will not be forced on them. There's a concept of privacy protection. We want to give back. We want to ensure that there is privacy, that we're giving the citizen is in control, and there's a lot of principle around inclusion. We don't want to create a two-speed economy. The have and have not, have the internet, don't have the internet, have the fancy phone, don't have the fancy phone. So those are all very important principles. And the last one is working on the open. Canada is working in the open. If you Google, you will find some GitHub repo with some of the projects. So I wanna make that. I wanted to share that with you because I think it's important. So we have a brave man here. We'll try. Hopefully we hear you well.
Just before you jump to that, I'll just mention that if you haven't seen, the privacy commissioners of the country all came together with a set of recommendations, and you can Google that. And, decentralized architecture, whether it's blockchain or distributed ledger. There was a whole lot of principles that they all published. And the Government of Canada, of course, has the next round of privacy consultations and the Bill C-27 that is more in alignment with the EU GDPR.
Thanks, Colleen. So we have 2 minutes.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I was wondering, there's a fairly recent standard from the W3 that came out called decentralized ID. I don't know if you know about that and what your thoughts would be on that. And I also heard you speak about informed consent. I'd be curious to know how you would see that. Obviously, we haven't resolved that problem, but what would be some ways that you think it could work?
So that was two
digitally.
questions, and we have 2 minutes. I'll let you fight for the answer.
So I guess yes, the decentralized identity spec. So I guess much like the verifiable credentials data model one. So that's work that is actually through the W3C, and yes, we are in support. I think that's where it's important to align, find alignment across the governments and the private sector. So I think there's a lot of alignment towards that verifiable credentials data model and the decentralized identifiers. I think there's a lot of work also going towards, I think where a lot of work is still needed, but there's work happening, is even for the digital wallets. So for instance, where we're actually going to be holding these credentials, I think even as much as important it is to have decentralized identifiers to be able to have whether to identify the endpoints of the transaction, like the issuer, the verifier, the holders of the wallet. I think there's other areas that there are gaps exist, which, as I said, digital wallets is particularly one. How do we make sure that these things are trusted, secure, are interoperable, certified? Yeah. So certainly, and we're working towards that. As I mentioned, the Standards Council of Canada. I think an end goal not only is the national standard of Canada, but we also want to get towards a conformity assessment program, which then you can have certified products like hockey helmets. We trust hockey helmets by the certification. We see that nice little sticker saying, yes, you can trust this is going to protect your head. We want to get to the same point with digital wallets, issuing and verifying services, trust registries, but not only for Canada. We want this to be able to line up with trading partners so then they could trust the certifications done here, so then we're not going to have a problem going to the U.S. using our wallet or the European Union. So yes, getting towards certified wallets and others because that's really important towards trust.
I don't know when they start putting music
10
and
second.
pull us out.
10 seconds. Privacy Commissioner of Canada provided guidance on informed consent.
Yeah. Thank you very much. This group, I think we're all here for 2 days, so please don't hesitate to reach out, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Thank you.